Spooky Buzz back with another video. This is just a little video from the sidebar. Um, they had their input and little dialogue of what's going on with Dirk's case and new indictments and stuff like that. So stay tuned.
Extradition to California, and a plea entered in court. There have been some major updates in the murder for hire case against Grammy Award-winning rapper Lil Durk as he postpones the release of his latest album to deal with court proceedings. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Durk Banks, known worldwide as Lil Durk, has officially been extradited to Southern California and has entered a not guilty plea to murder for hire charges. A grand jury indicted the rapper on felony counts for allegedly plotting to kill a rival rapper, but instead, it ended up with the death of that man's cousin. Now, when charges were first announced against Banks and alleged co-conspirators, and we covered this here on Sidebar, we didn't see Banks named in the same case as the defendants. He wasn't listed among the defendants in the case. But now we have a superseding indictment, and his name is at the top, followed by Kevon Grant, DeAndre Wilson, Keith Jones, David Lindsay, and Asa Houston. All the men are charged with conspiracy and use of interstate facilities to commit murder for hire resulting in death, as well as gun charges. And prosecutors claim the 32-year-old Chicago rap collective is actually a criminal enterprise. The superseding indictment states in or around 2010, defendant Durk Banks, also known as Lil Durk, aka Blood, aka Mustafa Abdul Malik, formed an organization called Only the Family, or OTF, which, among other things, produced and sold hip-hop music from artists primarily from the Chicago, Illinois area. OTF also acted as an association, in fact, of individuals who engaged in violence, including murder and assault, at the direction of defendant Banks and to maintain their status in OTF. Now, prosecutors allege that Banks had used OTF to really target this rival rapper from Georgia, known as Quando Rondo, real name Tyquan Bowman. He's referred to in the indictment as TB. Got to give you a little bit of a history on this and how prosecutors say all this happened. So Banks and Bowman, they were part of an apparent altercation at this Atlanta nightclub in 2020. And that altercation led to Durk's friend, King Von, another rapper, being shot and killed. And Atlanta police say that one of Quando Rondo's associates, Timothy Leaks, he was the one who actually shot Von, although that case blew apart. But Banks allegedly believed that Rondo was really at the center of this confrontation. By the way, we have been trying to cover updates for you in this Lil Durk case. Banks made it known through coded language that he would pay a bounty to anyone who killed Quando Rondo. But now you fast forward to 2022, and OTF associates allegedly learned that Quando Rondo is going to be traveling to Los Angeles. According to the indictment, Kevon Grant, allegedly a top lieutenant in this criminal enterprise, helped get several people together, flying them to Southern California, getting them set up in hotel rooms, finding weapons and cars for them to use in this apparent assassination attempt. And investigators say that this trip to LA was funded by either OTF or Mr. Banks directly. But to be clear, prosecutors are saying Banks didn't want any part of the planning to be connected to him because he reportedly texted one of his alleged co-conspirators, "Don't book no flights under no names involved with me." Now, authorities believe that Banks also flew to Southern California via private jet at this time. Now, the indictment accuses the defendants of following Quando Rondo's black Escalade around LA back in August of 2022. But here's the thing. Traffic camera photos show a white Infiniti seemingly following this SUV until it pulls into a gas station. The Infiniti is then parked behind the gas station in an alley. The indictment reads, on August 19th, 2022, at the Beverly gas station, defendants Jones and Lindsay and co-conspirator 2 used the firearms procured by defendant Grant, including the fully automatic firearm, to shoot at TB's car, striking and killing SR. This is TB's cousin, Savia Robinson, who was standing next to TB's car while TB was inside. The images below show defendants Jones and Lindsay and co-conspirator 2 firing their guns at TB's black Escalade. And this filing also includes surveillance photos of the suspects, or potentially the suspects, appearing to fire guns towards those gas pumps. Quando Rondo, again known as TB in the indictment, who was the alleged target of this murder for hire plot, wasn't hurt. But according to investigators, he was actually inside the gas station when the shooting happened, but his cousin, SR, Savia Robinson, was standing next to the SUV and was killed. Banks, though, is not accused of being present when that shooting happened, but more was kind of this figure overseeing it and funded it. But investigators do say also that he tried to profit off of this incident, this shooting, because in the superseding indictment, it states, following the attempted murder of TB and the murder of SR, defendant Banks sought to commercialize SR's death by rapping about his revenge on TB with music that explicitly referenced audio from a news clip taken shortly after SR's murder, where TB screamed, "No, no," after seeing SR's dead body. Told me they got an Addy, got location, go, go, green light, go, go, go. Look on the news and see your son, you screaming, no, no. And according to investigators, when word started circulating that Banks' alleged co-conspirators were going to be arrested in connection with the shooting, Banks allegedly tried to flee the country. An affidavit filed in support of the indictment reads, the FBI received notifications from U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, showing that Banks had been booked as a passenger on 2 international flights, a one-way flight from Miami to Dubai, United Arab Emirates, connecting through Doha, Qatar, scheduled to depart the evening of October 24th, and a one-way flight from Fort Lauderdale to Switzerland, connecting via New Jersey, also scheduled to depart the evening of October 24th. Banks did not board either flight. And I believe that there was also another flight about going to Italy as well, but obviously he didn't jump on any of those flights. He was arrested. And he was booked into the Howard County Jail in Florida. He was extradited back to California. He was moving cross country, appeared in this federal courtroom in Los Angeles last week for his arraignment. He entered a not guilty plea. And by the way, his trial is set to start soon. It's scheduled right now for January 7th, 2025. There's going to be several pretrial hearings in November and December, but that is really, really fast. I don't know if that trial date's going to stay, but one of those hearings in December is going to be about the possibility of bond. But for right now, he remains behind bars. And I should tell you, if he's convicted, or if they are convicted, all the defendants face a maximum of life in federal prison. And we've just learned that Banks has reportedly secured the legal services of Drew Findling, who is a prominent Atlanta lawyer who represented rappers like Lil Baby in the past. And by the way, Lil Durk's Deep Thoughts album, it was supposed to be released later this month, but that's now being pushed back to at least the end of January. I want to bring back in friend of the show, Detective Eric Barnes, to talk more about this. So, Detective Barnes, you can see how investigators move their way through this case, gathering evidence, piecing together the pieces, the parts of this puzzle. Look, these are all allegations at this point, but what are your initial takes on this investigation?
It seems in this investigation that the detectives were very meticulous with collecting their information. They didn't get in any rush to go out and make an arrest. Obviously, anytime that you're making a high-profile arrest or dealing with a high-profile investigation, the last thing you want to do is prematurely go and arrest someone of the caliber of Lil Durk, because you know you're going to be on the front page of the newspaper, and it's either going to give you positive exposure to your case or it's going to expose your investigation.
What do you think is the strongest evidence right now tying back to him?
The strongest evidence that I could see in reading through the indictment is that, you know, his organization, OTF, Only the Family, his credit cards were used by members of this organization to purchase and kind of coordinate the movement that was needed to make the murder happen.
Do you think there's an argument when he sends that text message, like, don't book any flights under my name? I've talked about this on previous sidebars, but could he be saying, I don't want any part of this. Don't put me on any of this. You do whatever you think you need to do. Keep me out of it. Maybe, but then you look at the allegations that he was profiting off of the killing afterwards. That would be maybe a tough sell to say he didn't either know what was going on or didn't have a part in it, right?
I think so. Another question I think you also have to ask is, if you knew that this situation was going to take place, do you have an obligation to report it to authorities? You know, obviously within this culture, you know, snitching is something that's looked down on. But if someone's going to use one of my credit cards to go and commit a murder, I may not call the police, but I'm definitely going to call the credit card company and block any charges that are coming up.
He could maybe say, I didn't know they were going to do that. Let me ask you this. With murder for hire cases, I've always been fascinated by this. Don't you feel it's a little ironic? The goal, of course, would be, if you take the allegations as true in this case or other cases, is the mastermind behind it doesn't want anything leaking back to him. But sometimes in these cases, there is the biggest evidence trail of all: paper trail, digital trail, messages, financial trail, right? Don't you see that? I mean, that's, again, you might say there's not a lot of evidence against Mr. Banks here, but there's at least something to warrant charges.
I believe that just the distance from Chicago to where they went in California was the biggest obstacle for them, because the only way for them to be able to travel and make this murder happen, they had to make arrangements. And you can't walk into an airport and pay cash for a plane ticket. You have to use electronic means to be able to get on a plane and rent cars. So they definitely left a paper trail in this that I think was the quote unquote smoking gun.
There's a part in the indictment when they talk about co-conspirators either known or unknown. Does that mean that investigators are still looking into other people who might be connected to this?
I believe that also when you talk about known or unknown, it alludes to the fact that there are other individuals out there that do have knowledge of this and maybe aren't fully ready to cooperate at this point.
What would lead them to cooperate?
There's a lot of different things that can cause somebody to cooperate. It could be maybe at this point in time, they just don't feel comfortable. They could be working through other charges on themselves, that they may be currently charged with different court cases. Also there's a lot of back and forth now, because you have individuals that were part of an organization that ultimately chose to turn against other members of the organization. So it's causing
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, because can I read you something? Can I read you
Yes.
something from the indictment? One of the overt acts, so in order to prove this kind of conspiracy, it's not just a criminal agreement, you need overt acts, steps that are taken. This is overt act number 25. On August 19th, 2022, defendants Grant, Wilson, Jones, Lindsay, and Houston, and co-conspirator 2, so this person's not named, traveled to a hamburger restaurant in Los Angeles County where the co-conspirators discussed, among other things, payments to defendants Jones and Lindsay for the shooting earlier that day. The only way, correct me if I'm wrong, the only way authorities can know that information is because of co-conspirator 2, right? That person has to be cooperating. Otherwise, if this isn't, they're talking about it, how else would they know they talked about it?
Right. There has to be some kind of corroborating information that can prove up both sides of that conversation that they allege took place.
Yeah, that's the part that makes me feel like you might have some cooperating witnesses, which could be, quite problematic for the defendants in this case. Talk to me about the attack. We've been showing the surveillance footage, the surveillance photos of this. It's embedded in this indictment. The idea that they were following in broad daylight, parked the car, opened fire at a gas station. That is really, really
Crazy. The attack was very very meticulous in the fact that they did some research. They followed them step by step, but the fact that they were willing to do it in broad daylight, I think, just kind of gives you a peek into what their commitment level was to make this happen. It's almost a sense of urgency that pushed them, that there was something there that made them feel like if this doesn't happen now, then it's not going to happen. So there was something that motivated them to make it happen then, and they were willing to risk it all during the day, broad day at a gas station.
Is it hard to process a scene like that?
I think one of the things that would make that scene difficult is that you have so many civilians at that location that aren't experienced in the gang world. And so you may have moms there pumping gas. You may have day laborers that are there stopping to make a break at the bathroom. And the first thing you think as a civilian when you hear gunshots is you're concerned for your own safety. So in terms of being able to get details of where the shots came from, what your suspect looked like, license plate numbers, things of that nature, is going to be very hard because people are disconnected from that type of activity.
I just can't imagine what would have happened if the bullet hit the gas pump, what that could have resulted in. That is just really, really frightening to think about. I mean, we're talking about a tragic death of somebody as well. One of the things that, is disturbing too, and I hate talking about it, but this is another case of prominent rappers who are caught up in the legal system, who are accused of being part of gangs. We covered the YSL case. From your experience, maybe looking into these kinds of, gang affiliated cases, what are some of the hallmarks that you're seeing here? What would you like to know as you're moving through this?
Well, Jesse, obviously, one of the things that's been synonymous with drill music, and specifically this genre of rap or hip hop that Lil Durk was involved in, is that the streets and rap are one and the same. You can't rap about this type of activity if you're not actually living that lifestyle. And so in order to have that backing, which is largely from the street culture and from other criminals, you have to be committing acts of crime. And so if you're not committing those acts, you lose your fan base. And so one of the things that I would dig deep into with this investigation is just really looking into and fact finding. You mentioned earlier that they're going to use some of his lyrics in one of his songs against him. The investigators have to really be careful to make sure that their timeline of when the song was released and these events line up, because it could be talking about a shooting, but now you run across the issue of making sure that it's this specific shooting and not some other shooting.
By the way, I wanted to just ask you one more question, which some prosecutors would say is strong evidence that Mr. Banks had an involvement in this, is the idea that he was fleeing. He knows that his alleged co-conspirators are getting arrested. He tries to flee the country. I interviewed Bradford Cohen, who's a prominent celebrity defense attorney, and he said, sure, it could look like that, but what it also could be is sometimes clients, sometimes defendants, they might know that police are going to arrest them, even if they know they're innocent. They have nothing to do with this, but they know that police are going to arrest them, thinking they're involved. And they will purposely book flights to see if they get flagged. Because if the flights get flagged, then they know that there's a warrant out for their arrest or they're about to be arrested. What do you make of that?
Well, I honestly, I think that, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And I think in this scenario, pressure was applied. And I think that Lil Durk needed a little more time to think and gather his thoughts. Now, whether that meant he was involved or not, to the extent that they're alleging, I don't know. But I do believe that he was trying to buy himself some more time to kind of get away from the situation and kind of grasp what was really going on.
All right, well, we will see where this goes next. Again, little development here. He's been extradited, pled not guilty, now part of this superseding indictment. Detective Eric Barnes, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate it.